Hello everyone, it's been a while since I've done a microgreens video. It's the holidays, got really busy, been dealing with the cold, being outside, everything. I can give you a million excuses, but anyways, let's get started here. I want to take the time and show you guys some different planting techniques that I use for planting microgreens. I've done videos on most of this stuff, over time. Some are very specific videos on how to grow certain crops. Some are just more vague on how to plant microgreens in general. But on this video, I'm just going to cover a few more crops and a couple of different techniques that I use when I'm growing. So let's get started. The very first one I'm going to do will be sunflower. So I have some trays here that I just got done sanitizing. It's a weird camera angle for me. I've never done it like this, but we'll see. I want to make sure you guys can see everything I'm doing. So I got my my tray. I've got some soil down under my bench, already screened. Let me grab my trusty bowl of frosted flakes here. And I do 3 scoops. Someday I'll actually use a scoop that does it all in one scoop. I don't know why, but almost for a year now I've been using this same bowl, and it works. So I'm just gonna smooth that out. And I'm only gonna do one tray of each variety that I show you today. And hopefully this will answer some questions about how I do different things. So it's about half the tray full. It's about 1 inch of soil. After I water it, it'll be less than that. It'll be more like maybe 3/4 of an inch. So get that. I don't soak any of my seeds. I know you've probably heard me say that before, but I have done the soaking method, and I haven't found it to be valuable. You maybe save a day, maybe, in the germination process. I'm not even sure if that's the case. But so what I'm going to do with my seed here, I'm going to take a nice handful of it, and I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it on. I don't weigh my seed either. I go by looks. So I want a nice even coverage. Try not to have too many that are stacked on top of each other. I know some people are really anal about weighing everything. I do measure my seed. If it's the smaller seeds, I use tablespoons, and you'll see that in a minute. But for something like sunflower, I just try to get a nice even base. So I'll sort of spread those around. I want to have basically edge-to-edge coverage with all the seeds basically touching each other, but not too many stacked on top of each other. If you have them stacked on top of each other, sometimes the seed below will pick up the seed above it, and that will turn into a root up on top, and you'll knock it off, and it'll end up just being, killed off anyway. So it's kind of a waste of a seed. I typically don't go for really high compact growth. I like it to be a little bit airy, especially with sunflower, because sunflower has a tendency to have a bunch of seeds that'll come up maybe a little bit later than the other seeds, and then they'll stay down lower, and you'll end up with a ton of shoots that still have a hole on them. And I found if I go a little bit more sparse with my planting, that I don't see that problem quite as often. So I'll take my hose here, and I'll just water that in. Let that sit for a second, let that soak in. It's all kind of puddling up right now. I water extremely heavy. Some of that is because I don't pre-soak, so they're sort of getting their soak while they're planted. I don't have to pre-soak them, sprout them, and then put them in here. That's all happening at once. And this tray will be getting another tray stacked on top of it, and I'll show you that when the time comes. But yeah, so I just let it soak up a little bit. Yeah, water it in nice and heavy again. So as you can see, if you can see that in the video, it's actually puddled up. That's going to absorb. I'm just going to slide this aside. Set that over here for now. Let that soak in while I start my next tray. So one thing to point out, that tray, you'll notice I didn't use 2 trays. I used a single tray. My next tray, I'm going to use 2 trays. So I have a tray here that's got holes in it. And I've got a tray here with no holes. So I'm going to put the tray with no holes in the bottom and then put a tray with holes on top. And that's because this product I'm going to want to water. It's called underwatering. And so when I water this product, I'll actually pick up the tray and water the tray below and not directly on top. Excuse me. This is going to be radish, and you can water radish on top, and it's fine. But because I have the trays already, I prefer to underwater, but like I said, with radish, you don't have to water below. It's not a big deal. So let's get 3 scoops in here again. Just kind of smooth that out. There's some people out there that they smooth them out and then they'll take a board and they press it to get it nice and flat. That's a fine way to do it. I just don't do it. That press also can work nice for after you've put the seed on top. You can press it again and kind of press your seed into the soil. It's just not something I've ever done. Doesn't mean it's not a good thing to do. Alright, now for this seed, I actually water the soil down before I plant the seed because it's a lighter seed and it could kind of go to the puddles and kind of, you know, group up there, and I don't want that. I want it to stay nice and even the way I spread it on there. So for now, we will go ahead and I'll spray this all down. It's a nice heavy watering. It's all kind of pooled up a little bit. Let me grab a radish seed. Let's see what I want to start with here. I've got some red arrow seed here. All my seed comes from True Leaf Market. You've heard me say that a million times. I use them exclusively. I like them. And I haven't had any problems with them. And so I recommend them. And I can put my affiliate link in the description of this video, and if you use that link and you purchase seeds, I'll make a commission on it. It's one way, you know, it kind of helps me making these videos. If you want to just Google search True Leaf Market or go to Johnny's or go to anybody else, go ahead. But if you do use my link, it's appreciated. So in this case, I use my tablespoon, and I use that as my measuring spoon and as my spreader. And so I'll just kind of spread that out nice and evenly. And I'll use 3 tablespoons to a tray. You could use a little bit more. I'm sure it's fine. I haven't tried to find like the extreme limits on what's the most you can do, but I find 3 is a really good number. You get a nice full tray. You've seen in my previous videos what my radishes look like. I'm very happy with them. Just trying to get this as nice and even as possible. Radish this is actually my favorite crop to grow. It's so easy. Anybody can grow radish. It's not picky. You can have clumped up seeds and it's kind of okay. Other products like amaranth, you really can't. Amaranth has to be very even. If you have clumps of it, you'll get dampen off problems. But radish is kind of forgiven. So that's the radish. It's red arrow radish. So now I've got that all heavily watered in and all that, but what I'm going to do, I like to give it kind of one more watering, but I won't use that same, I had it on the garden setting before. Now I'll put it on flour, which is a nice light misty spray, and it won't spray the seed around much. And just kind of wet them down a little. So that tray I'll put directly on top of my sunflower tray. So you can see here, they're stacked up now. My sunflower is underneath the radish. And I'll grab another tray with holes, another tray without holes. And I'll go ahead and I'll put my 3 scoops in it. So basically I've shown you kind of 2 techniques already. One is the sunflower, which I use a single tray. Don't use 2 trays. No need for it. That'll get top watered. The other one was the radish, and there was a couple differences there. And now I'm going to show you one that seems to have a lot of interest out there. And that will be chard. It'll be ruby red chard. And I'll show you how I avoid getting seed holes come up with my chard. It's the same exact process if you're doing beets. It's the same exact process if you're doing cilantro. I'm sure there's others if I thought about it. So, gonna go ahead and water that in. Oh, change it back to garden. Pretty good heavy water in there. Let's see if I can find my my chard seed. Here it is, Swiss chard, ruby red. Again, it's a seed, I don't weigh it. I just spread it out to what I think looks good. One of the things with chard and beets is that it's what I call a cluster seed. And so each one of those seeds will typically grow, multiple sprouts out of it. And that sometimes is part of the problem with the getting seed hulls in the sprouts, which a lot of people don't grow beets and they don't grow chard because of the seed hulls. It's a major problem. But I'm going to show you why it's not really a problem for me. And there's other people I've seen on Facebook groups that they do the same thing. I may have discovered this on my own. I may have learned it from following other people on YouTube or on Facebook. I don't know anymore what I self-taught myself and what I learned from others, because I'm always watching videos on this stuff just like you were watching right now. It's how I learn everything. Either I learn from trial and error, or I learn from other people and their trial and error. And so all my methods are subject to improvement and change. Nothing is set in stone. I'm showing you the way I'm doing it today, though. So I got nice good coverage here, and there's 2 things I can do next. I can cover this again with soil, or I can cover it again with vermiculite. And I don't know for sure. I kind of think I like the soil better, but I've mentioned doing the vermiculite so many times that I'm going to go ahead and do that again. I'm not sure really why I'm leaning towards the soil, but one thing that's important, if you're going to cover it with soil, make sure it's a really light, fluffy, well-screened soil. And if you if you don't have that type of soil, if you have a soil that when it gets wet, it clumps up and sticks together, you're going to have a bad experience. At first, you might be happy that, you know, you see your shoots are coming up, there's not really any seeds on them, but then you're going to see these blobs of dirt that's clumped together, and it will raise up with the shoots, and then it will collapse back down on them and crush them all. And if you try to break it up, you'll have trouble. That's why I went to vermiculite to begin with, because vermiculite doesn't have that problem. This current soil I'm using doesn't really have that problem either. But let's go ahead and do vermiculite. So I've got a bag of vermiculite behind me here. You can't see it. I'm going to put a nice, you know, fairly liberal coat of this right on top of the seeds. It doesn't hurt to be a little heavy on this. I find the thicker the coat you do of soil or vermiculite, the less seed holes you're going to have when the shoots come up. And so this is a really good, a strong 1/4 inch, maybe even closer to 3/8 to a 1/2 inch of vermiculite here. It's probably more than you really have to use, but that's what I'm doing. One thing to mention is that I stacked that sunflower. That sunflower will stay stacked for 5 to 6 days, and the radish will also be stacked. I'm going to put this right on top of the radish, and the radish will only need to be stacked for 3 days, and then that's ready to be uncovered and put directly into light. If you wanted to think it through, you could make sure that your stack, you know, your bottom one is the last one to need to be unstacked. Typically, I'm growing, you know, 3 or 4 flats of the same thing at a time, so it's not a big deal. But for this case, for the video, I'm making a whole mix. But this will also be about the same as the sunflower. This will be 5 to 6 days of being stacked before it gets uncovered. So now I get the vermiculite on there. I'll water that in. I can use my regular garden spray because the vermiculite doesn't really move around a lot. But again, just like the sunflower, I want a nice heavy coat or a nice heavy watering. So there we have it. That is going to get stacked. Going to put it right on top of the radish. Like I said, it's not the optimal stack pattern, but you get the idea. It's about stacking it. So I've got my 3 stacks here now. Sunflower, radish, and chard. 3 slightly different methods. And let's go ahead and make another tray. For this product, I again have 2 trays, one with holes, one without. They're all wet 'cause I just got done sanitizing them. Sanitize your trays with a little bit of bleach or hydrogen peroxide. I use bleach because it's readily available. I wash it all off and I'm done. Hydrogen peroxide is probably a bit more environmentally friendly. But so that's that. Put in my 3 scoops. Alright, I think what I'll do now is I'll plant some arugula. Not sure if I've ever planted arugula before in a video. It's an easy crop to grow. I thought about doing peas, but if you've been watching my videos, I've already done a really good video on how I plant my peas. It's pretty good detailed, so I don't know if you really need to see more. I can link to that video at the end of this video. Right, So that's all soiled in. Water it in heavily. That ought to be enough. See if I can find my arugula. There we go. Arugula. I don't buy this in large quantities. Most stuff I buy in 1-pound bags. And that lasts me actually quite a while. Except for peas and sunflower, I buy those in 5-pound bags. And arugula, I don't really grow a ton of it by itself. I actually have a mix, it's called the spicy mix, that already has arugula in it. But I actually prefer to grow everything individually and not in a mix. But for now, let's do it that way, individually. So I got 1 tablespoon. Arugula is one of those crops I try not to have too many clumps. I really try to get it nice and evenly spread on there. Arugula is, like I said, pretty easy, but it can be a little bit finicky. If you don't have really great airflow, you can get damping off problems. One of the great things about arugula is that it grows really quickly. It will sprout really quickly. And you can stack arugula, but you don't have to. You don't have to really stack most of them. Some things you do, like sunflower. But arugula, you can take it or leave it on the stacking. I'm going to do 1.5 tablespoons spread out over this. You could do more and do less. Alright, so that's all spread in. Now what I'm going to use this tray for, this will be my top tray of my stacked trays. Some people like to use bricks and things to weigh down their final tray so that everything's still stacked. What I try to do is I try to use a crop that doesn't need to be stacked and let that be the top tray. And so in this case, it's arugula. So I got my arugula here, and I need to grab a tray without holes. This tray here will work. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of water down the inside of that tray a little. Try to get a little bit extra humidity in there and cap it off. So that's it. That's my my stacked up. Had some seeds at the bottom of that. Guess I didn't wash it as good as I thought. So that's it. So that's how you plant sunflower, radish, chard, which is a big one, and the arugula. And I do my amaranth very similar to the arugula. I've shown that, and I did a pretty good detailed video on that. Yeah, so for this basic concept, you can grow just about anything microgreens wise. You know, you just need to know, are there problems with seed holes? Should you cover the soil? Should you not cover the soil? Should it be stacked? Should it not be stacked? And I hope that this was informative for some of you out there, and I hope it answered some of your questions if you had some. And let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, watch the rest of my videos. I'll put some of them up here. You can click those. And thanks for watching.